Before you board your horse anywhere, you need to understand this. Because picking out the wrong boarding setup can cost you thousands of dollars, cause you to have a huge headache, create dangerous situations, and honestly, it can even make you regret owning your horse. And I don't want that for you. We all own horses because we love them. So let's not let the boarding situation spoil it. Hey, it's Adri Witherhorse, and I'm going to break down every single kind of boarding situation that exists out there. Well, I mean, at least every boarding situation that's on my radar. I'm sure there's some situations out there I'm not aware of, but these are the most common boarding situations that exist for horse owners. We'll talk about the cheapest options all the way to the most exclusive, expensive options, and who each option is best suited for. Okay, so there's a huge range when it comes to boarding. If you're someone who's looking for a place to board your horse, you're probably aware of this already. You look online and you have to go through all these different boards and see what they offer, what's included, what's not included. There's so much, so let's just make this easy. There's a huge range, but it really comes down to one thing: how much work you are doing versus how much you're paying someone else to do the work for you. So the more money you pay, generally speaking, the less work you have to do. And the less money you pay for board, the more responsibilities you will have. And that is the only thing straightforward about this entire video. Everything else is nuanced. So let's start with the cheapest option, which is self-care board. This is the cheapest option, and for a reason. You will see. You will soon find out. In self-care board, you are responsible for everything. Feeding your horse, making sure your horse has water. Oh, is your horse not on a round bale 24/7? Congratulations! That means you get to go out to the barn at least twice a day to feed your horse. I know, it's annoying, but it's cheap. It's cheap. You are responsible for making sure your horse has access to water. Depending on where you are in the country, this can be a real sinker in the wintertime, because if you don't have an automatic waterer that keeps the ice at bay, that means you are going to have a date with a pitchfork, and you're going to have to smash the ice apart to make sure your horse has access to the water underneath. And it's not just the winter time you have to worry about. In the summertime, algae grows quickly. You're going to have to change and scrub the water bucket, get the algae out of there. Horses love to dunk their hay for some reason. They don't like it when you soak their hay, but they'll soak it themselves. Horses are fickle. You are responsible for cleaning out the hay and debris and dead bugs and whatever else is in your water trough, and making sure that in the hot weather, your horses are getting their water replenished more frequently. So hooray! Lots of work for you. You are responsible for cleaning your horse's stall if your horse is stalled. There's some self-care where your horse has access to a stall, and there's self-care board where your horse is in a pasture all day. Either way, you're going to be picking up poo. With self-care board, you're also responsible for turnout. If you want your horse to leave its stall, or vice versa, if you want to bring your horse in from the pasture and return to a stall, that's on you, boo. You are also responsible for blanketing. If your horse needs a fly sheet, a fly mask, fly spray, grazing muzzle, literally anything at all, you are responsible for. The only thing self-care board is providing is a space for you to rent. And that's it. If you miss a day, let's say there's a family emergency that comes up, or there's bad weather and you can't get out to the barn, things happen. Guess what? Either A, no one's going to take care of your horse for you, or B, they will, but then they'll charge you for it. Okay, so who is this option for? Not me. This is for people who are on a very tight budget. So, oh wait, maybe this is for me. Okay, but seriously, it's also for people who are very experienced owners. You don't want to take a novice or someone who just got their first horse being completely responsible for taking care of their horse, because then they don't really know what they're doing yet. So it's for people who know what they're doing and to people who live close to the barn. If you're like a 10-15 minute drive, it might not be so bad having to drive twice a day to the barn to take care of your horse. However, anything further than that, you're going to experience a major burnout. To anybody out there who's considering the self-care board, full disclosure, if like most horse people, you also have a full-time job and a moderate to lengthy commute, this setup will burn you out fast. But think of the money. Think of the money you'll be saving. Woo woo. It'll probably pay for your burnout therapy. Hopefully. Okay, let's take it up a notch. Let's say self-care board, that's just too much for you at the moment. You have it in your budget to step it up. The next tier is partial board. This is where things start to get a little more balanced. Partial board means the barn handles some of the responsibility, some casual care. This varies from barn to barn as well. But typically, a partial board means that the barn is responsible for things like feeding your horse, turning your horse out, but you're still responsible, in most cases, for cleaning your horse's stall. Sometimes that even means providing your own shavings, administering supplements to your horse, and any extra care like blanketing or medication administration. So this is a good in-between option for some folks, but here's the problem. Every barn defines partial board differently. There's no standard, unfortunately, so there's a lot of confusion. And if you don't ask questions and you assume, hey, partial board, they would feed my horses grain twice a day, you just assume this facility does the same, you are going to get burned. Make sure you know exactly what's included and get it in writing. So who is partial board for? Partial board is for people who want a little bit of help, need a little bit of their horse's care alleviated from themselves and to be absorbed by the barn, but they still want to be hands-on. It's also for people on a moderate budget. Maybe you don't need to be so cheap to go self-care, but maybe you don't have the funds to, do the exclusive, luxurious, all-inclusive package deal either. Let's take it up another notch. Next, full board. Full board is what most people visualize when they think about boarding their horse. With full board, the barn typically handles feeding, making sure your horse has adequate access to fresh water, stall cleaning, turnout, and just basic daily care. Checking them over once a day, make sure there's no lumps, bumps, scrapes, that kind of thing. In this scenario, you show up, you ride your horse, or groundwork, bond, whatever you want to do, and then you leave. But hold on there, partner. We're not done just yet. You might still be responsible for blanketing, holding for the vet or farrier, supplements, extra feeding. Some horses need to be fed 3 times a day. Sometimes your horse's hay needs to be soaked. So this is for people who are very busy, people who are first-time owners, and they're not exactly comfortable doing the full care of the horse themselves. And it's great for people who can't be there every day. The majority of boarders fall into the full board category. So that's full board, not to be confused with full care board. This is where things get to be a premium. Full care means the barn handles everything. Feeding multiple times a day, no problem. If you want your horse to be fed 5 small meals a day, full care board. That's for you. They will clean your horse's stall. Sometimes they'll even do it multiple times a day. They'll turn your horse out. They'll blanket your horse for you. Apply the fly spray. They'll change your blankets out if the weather changes. And in this scenario, your horse is managed whether you show up or not. A little reality check, this is expensive, but it's also the safest option for people who have unpredictable schedules, which is a lot of people. Maybe you'll get called into work one day. Or maybe your kids are sick and they have to stay home. Maybe you work for yourself and you suddenly get projects. Who knows? But bottom line, full care board is for people who have demanding jobs. It's for owners who travel and for people who just want peace of mind, knowing that their horse is going to get the best care possible. And they don't have to worry about if their horse is sweating under their blanket or shivering without one. Next up, training board. This is a completely different category of board. Training board includes everything from full care board plus training. This means a trainer's working with your horse regularly, and there's even tiers of training board. It can be once a week, 3 times a week, 5 times a week. Someone's working with your horse. Sometimes training board will include lessons. And what a lot of people love is their horse's progress is being almost micromanaged. A lot of times with training board, they'll have a little journal and they'll write and track the rides that they've had with the horse. Sometimes they film it, send it to the barn owners, recap the sessions in an email, follow it up with a phone call. It's very posh indeed. And with training board, you're paying for results, not just the care. So who is this for? This is for people who have young horses in need of training, owners who have problem horses, maybe they need a little extra. And we're not trainers. Most horse people are not trainers. We can only do so much. Full training board is also for riders who want to improve quickly. Because the sad truth is, if you don't ride consistently, you can become a passenger on your own horse. Your horse will leagues ahead of you. So some training board focuses on the rider, some's on the horse, some's a combination. So it's an option, albeit an expensive one. And then we've got the best kind of board out there. My opinion is not always right, but I will die on this hill. Pasture board is the best kind of board. So pasture board, this is usually one of the cheaper options, but it depends. The reason it's cheaper is largely because with pasture board, your horse is out in a pasture with access to a shelter. This is key. And they don't get brought into a stall. So that means you don't have to pay for shavings. The barn doesn't have to hire people to clean out your horse's stall. And it's just a lot more hands off. So typically your horse lives outdoors full time, usually in a group setting. Although I have seen pasture board where every horse gets their own little pasture. They're next to horses, but they're not in with other horses. So not ideal, but I guess if you have an aggressive horse, maybe that could be perfect for you. With pasture board, the barn usually provides hay, water, and just basic monitoring. Usually they're not doing anything too extensive. They're not usually like taking the blankets off and like feeling. I mean, that would be ideal. That's probably what should happen. Horses are hardy. I mean, they're also very sensitive and you look at them wrong and they get sick. But this is just what happens. The pros are that it is a much more natural lifestyle for the horse. Horses in the wild can walk up to 30 miles a day. That's a lot. And you can't really do that in a stall or a tiny pasture. Horses in pasture turnout tend to be much happier and less dangerous because they don't have all that pent up energy. Usually they have pretty good muscling, especially if there's hills involved. They tend to be a little bit more fit because they're trying to get away from bugs, so they're walking, that kind of thing. It's often cheaper. I've never boarded my horse at a boarding facility where pasture board was not cheaper, but I've heard of instances where it is the same as if your horse was in a stall. The cons, of course, your horse gets less individual attention, and if your horse gets injured, it's not going to be caught as quickly as it would if your horse was in the barn. So horses who are super accident prone, this might not be the best option. Sometimes they need to get put in a stall if they keep hurting themselves over and over. And they need to be turned out for a set amount of time with turnout boots on. I feel personally, it is harder to manage your horse's weight and harder to manage injuries if they're outside. So I just talked about how horses who are accident prone, you can't really prevent them from getting injured. They're gonna run, slip, fall, get their hoof stuck somewhere. There might be like a little hole in the ground somewhere. Sometimes the soil gets washed away and it makes the ground uneven. My horse, and this is the case with many 24/7 pasture turnout kiddos, you get a round bale, and my horse is like, great, all you can eat buffet. So I'm kind of like, I want her to be out 24/7. She needs to be out 24/7, so she's moving around, but then she eats her hay, like a lot of it. So if your horse is an easy keeper, a lot of times you have to put a small whole hay net over the round bale, and a lot of times you have to put a grazing muzzle on your horse too. Another con of pasture board is it makes blanketing harder. It makes pretty much any kind of care you have to do for your horse harder because your horse is usually further away from the barn The turnout paddocks, those are usually much closer to the barn, and the kiddos who are out 24/7, those pastures tend to be further out into the farm. So if you're blanketing your horse, having to deworm them, get them for the farrier, anything is a little more intense. Special care is just a little more limited. So who is this for? Believe it or not, this is a great option for most easy keepers because they're outside all the time, so they're more likely to move around. Again, if they're outside, there's bugs and insects and it keeps them moving. It's great for horses who have heaves or respiratory issues where being inside of a barn, when it's dusty, triggers them to have equine asthma. I did make a video on this. If you want, I'll go ahead and put a link in the description for it, and I'll also put a card up here. Pasture board is also great for horses who do well in herds, which is most horses if given the chance. And it's also good for budget conscious owners as well. I'm saving myself several $100s a month letting my horse have the best lifestyle that you can even have. I'm so happy that pasture board is not the most expensive because otherwise I would have to shell out for it. Luckily, it tends to be on the more affordable side. Let's talk about where people go wrong when it comes to boarding their horse. And I see this all the time. Many horse owners, especially if they're newer or at least newer to boarding, assume that all boarding barns work kind of the same way. The standard of care. I've talked to people and they're like, well, my other barn did this. Or they say, well, my other facility never used to charge for this. Make sure you know exactly what's included and what is not included in your board, and be sure to get in writing so you can reference it. Another major no-no is people choosing their boarding option based on price and not based on what actually works best for them and their horse. If they do this, trust me, they figure it out right quick. But still, not quick enough. The cheapest option actually isn't the cheapest if it causes you mental anguish and burnout or your horse suffers. And the most expensive board is not worth it if you're not using what you pay for. What if you're paying an extra $100 a month because this facility has a walker? Do you use a walker? Or you pay for access to trails. Do you trail ride? Make sure if you're paying extra for amenities, they are amenities that you will use. And more expensive doesn't always mean better. I feel like I should point that out. Okay, so how are you supposed to choose amongst all these options? Well, ask yourself this honestly. How often can I realistically go to the barn? Is it once a week? Twice a week? More? Less? Do you want responsibility or convenience? Maybe want's the wrong word. What do you need, responsibility or do you need convenience? Where do your priorities lie? Can you afford surprise costs? You've probably heard of the term house poor, where people use the vast majority of their income on their housing, so much so that they can't actually afford anything else. They might have a really nice house, a beautiful home, but they can't afford to go to the fair, for example. I don't know why I thought of that. I think subconsciously my brain's like, Adri, go to the fair this year. But anyway, focus. So make sure you can afford surprise costs, because boarding is never just a monthly fee. If there's an emergency or there's an outbreak and, things get messy with your horse, you're going to need to be able to cover additional costs as needed. If you're trying to decide between boarding your horse and keeping them at home, which I did make a video on. Again, I'll put a tag up above, link in the description. That is a completely different conversation that we need and should have. So go watch that video if you need to, because trust me, boarding is only half the story. If you found this video helpful, be sure to subscribe to my channel. I'll see you next week in the next horse video. Bye for now.